Hey everybody, Adam Savage with Norm Chan in my cave and our Apple Visions. We saw your comments in the video where I made the original version of this, thinking maybe I'm just a shill and haven't played with this. We're here to talk about our first year with Apple Vision and what we think.
Yeah, it's been 1 year since this thing came out. I'm obviously a big fan of VR, mixed reality, and I don't think a lot of people know that you are similarly obsessed.
Absolutely. I really love being immersed, and we've made an Oculus show for years. We made a show on Oculus for several years. I still think that witnessing people holding and working with materials in VR is one of the great use cases for VR in terms of gaining a physical understanding of a process.
Yeah. And we could not have been more excited for the Vision Pro to come out last year. Something that we didn't get to communicate to you out there is how we were talking nonstop leading up to it. You know, we were both equally hyped when it first came out. We were both on the subreddits every single day, following along, giving each other tips and tricks on how to what things we're discovering, how to best use it. And as you can see, you've been modifying your use with it over these past 12 months.
I also want to give some perspective to our excitement. Apple as a company, whether you love them or not, they have successfully, more than a couple of times in their existence, entered the arena of a technology that seemed mature and re-educated the public and business on what a mature version of that product looked like. They did it with the iPod, they did it with the phone. And we were really excited, having used Oculus since its beginning, that the Apple Vision was going to be that same kind of thing again. And in some ways it is, in some ways it isn't.
And let's be upfront. We know this is an expensive device. I mean, Apple has come out and we don't have any insight into how well it's doing, but based on how much they're pushing it and what you see in the stores.
They spend so much money.
Yeah, like Tim Cook has said, this is a peek into the future. And this is not gonna be like about a product recommendation. We're not telling people to buy this right now. I think we just wanna kind of tell you how we've been using it, the lessons that we've taken away from it, and going for what we hope for this type of interaction, computing platform, device for entertainment, going forward.
And look, whether or not, one of the sites put up an article last week about VR is dead. And I think reports of its demise are greatly exaggerated, but I also agree that it hasn't caught fire to the degree that I was hoping it would. But I also think that we're going to end up here. I really believe in whatever period of time, my computer will be in these, and this is like step 3 of 40-step process to get to that.
And this might be a fundamentally different device than the one you wear every day, right? I think of this more as something I'm going to use in my office, on my couch, to watch movies, to do some computing, not necessarily out in the world interacting with people, using the eyesight personas or whatnot. So I'm curious, Adam, though, what are you using this most for these days?
I am using it mostly for watching content, mostly for watching movies. I play with some of the apps, I play some of the games. I'm particularly weirdly fond of Sky Guide in here.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Sky Guide is an Apple app where you can hold up your phone and see what the star above you is or what planet, and you can see constellations. Sky Guide on the Vision, you can choose to not just look at the sky, but you can choose to be standing somewhere. And so you can stand on a rooftop in Tokyo. And I will say, I've stood on my deck here in the Mission, looking at the night sky through the Vision, and it felt absolutely like I was standing on a rooftop in Tokyo. I was feeling a breeze, I feel the cold, I'm looking at the sky, it was incredibly and delightfully immersive. Transportive, yeah.
I think a lot of the immersive media that I've been watching feels that way as well. A lot of the rendered environments, a bunch of apps that put you with a little bit of photogrammetry, even the environments that they put you in. Sometimes I like sitting in.
I totally do too.
Without any real content around.
Yeah.
Even if it's on a loop, it's like an immersive wallpaper for my life.
And it's very, very peaceful in the spaces that this thing can create. That's really, really lovely. I want to say there is one app for the Apple Vision that I felt was like the harbinger of a whole nother world, and it's Magic Room. So Magic Room is an app that simply shows you visually the LiDAR data from the Apple Vision. So if you turn on Magic Room when you're in a room, it will start showing you
It's mapping
what it's seeing physically. And it's like it'll cove the corners until you look at it for a while, and then it'll build a more accurate model. And so as you look around your room and you walk around your room, it's filling in that detail because it's gathering higher level detail from close up. So as you move around the space, it creates a more defined rendering of that space. But then as you move to another room in your house and you look back, you can see the other room you've just been in. And I started to realize, oh, I can walk around my house and see my whole house all at once. This is how I discovered that the chandelier in the foyer of my house sits absolutely directly centered under the toilet of my upstairs guest bathroom.
It's X-ray vision.
It is X-ray vision, and it's thrilling in this way. I understood aspects of my house I've never seen before using this.
That's really funny because I've heard of the app, I've tried it, and one of the features is after it does that meshing, you can apply shaders, make it look like the Matrix, all sorts of visual effects. But you're less interested in the visual effects. You like the spatial understanding, which is kind of what they're selling when they call it spatial computing. It's the understanding of your relationship with space is different once it passes through the computer.
And that spatial understanding is the same reason I've built architectural models of every house and apartment I've ever lived in. It helps me put the thing in my body. And walking through my house, I walked through all 3 stories of my house, and eventually I crashed the app because it's a lot of data to hold on to. But I'm sitting there in my basement looking all the way up through the diagonal of my house and understanding the relationships between these pieces. It really was a remarkable new way of seeing a part of the world that nothing else would have given me that vision of, pun intended.
Similarly, when they updated the feature so that we could have our personas in a shared space, we could do a virtual FaceTime call. I would see your avatar that you scanned and created. You would see mine with hands, not in a window, but in a virtual space, in my space. I'm in your space. And then share a digital model where we could look and walk around a 3D model of anything. That felt transformative as well.
That feels, that execution, and we don't do a lot of co-working on this because that's not part of our process, but the couple of times we have done FaceTime through this, it has been the most transformative co-working environment I've ever been in, and I want to speak to a couple of aspects of it. One is the triangulation of the sound. When you're wearing Apple headphones, your voice will triangulate to your location in my line of sight, and if you move, so does your voice's triangulation, which is uncanny. In the best way, in the right way. Secondly, the avatars totally look weird. They do. True. And yet, if you are seeing, when I see Norm's avatar and I'm making eye contact with it and I'm hearing his voice, I immediately stop looking at Norm's face because it doesn't matter. This is my friend and my colleague and we're just communicating. And the uncanny valley just disappears with that. And the last thing about co-working in this is they've made the latency so low. When I talk latency, when I say a word on my phone, it's probably 100 milliseconds before you, on the other end of that line, hear me say that. On this, I think the latency is under 20 milliseconds. It's really, really immediate.
Yeah. I think there are several of those experiences, like the co-working, like the mapping, that feel really meaningful and powerful. And we know there's a ton of technology and research and effort that goes behind that. Those all fall for me in a bucket of these novel things. Every time I try it, it feels magic. It feels like a little glimpse into the future, but I'm not using it a lot. So I want to go back to the question, what are the things that after a year, you're going back and then using it regularly, not just for the wow factor, but real utility?
For me, specifically, and I include my beautiful Samsung TV in this, there's no movie watching experience that I get more enjoyment out of than watching it on this with Apple headphones. That's my favorite use case. And I take this on every trip I go on. It is invaluable on the airplane. It has also become a mission critical travel tool for me.
Yeah, I've done the same. Last year, I think we went to the UK 3 times. International trips, 10-hour flights, and all 3 of those times, took the Vision Pro, put it on, and it eased. I felt less claustrophobic where I was sitting, having just window panes and having the digital elements extend beyond my physical confines. And that cinema screen, it's amazing. I prefer it as well. I mean, it's, again, It's funny because we think of VR, one of the powers of VR is ability to bring people together, right? It's like the network effect is so powerful. But I'm
of telepresence, et
yes,
cetera.
yeah. I'm so happy using this solo, solitary.
Yeah.
You know, I'm in my office, or maybe I'm in the room, in the living room, and someone else is watching our real TV, but I'm okay enjoying the virtual screen and watching the thing solo here, or in a hotel room, or on an airplane seat.
Yeah, it's true. And I love coming back to my room at the end of a shoot day when we're in another country or another state and just getting on this to compute. Like it's much more, it feels like it's very relaxing end of the day, sort of wind down to scroll through my social media and my not social media, but my, the regular sites I visit. But I want to talk about being alone, because one of my first big issues with it, and you can see I've got the globular cluster headset on this, is that when I was first using it, I was using the AirPod Pro Maxes, the headphones, which I love and are, again, a mission critical flight tool for me. But I did not love the feeling of having my eyes totally covered, my ears totally covered, all this crap strapped to my head, and I found it over time really grating. Which is why I went to the globular cluster, and when I use it, I don't even use the eye shroud. I bring in the cluster and it floats here.
Yeah.
And this is really interesting. Plus these, the AirPod Pros. You might not know that Apple has gotten a permission from the FDA to test these for us as hearing aids. And I went through the hearing aid testing process. And these are absolutely as good as my $900 Jabras in here. In fact, in some ways, they're better. But the most killer app about these using Apple Vision is I put them in and I'm getting my surround sound, but I'm also getting a hearing aid level hearing of my house. So I'm no longer insulated from my house. I'm now part of it and included in it. And I no longer feel like, hey, baby, while you're watching this thing, I'm going to put a bunch of crap on my head and go over into this little world of mine. I feel much more like part of the process. And that makes me use this more.
It's very interesting because just like the Vision Pro is passing visual data through its camera onto its display, it's doing the same with audio.
Yeah.
Right. It's the same. You're going through some type of processing, which for you actually enhances your connection to the space. This wasn't the first head strap, third-party head strap.
I went for many of them. I tried a lot of different
we 3D
ones.
printed mounts to do the double loop.
Yep, and in fact, actually, I still travel with the double loop. I still like the double loop for travel. This is a little bit bulky for me, and I sometimes might throw this into my luggage, but for the most part, I'd rather go really simple where I can just pull it out and put it on and be ready to go.
Yeah. I think in addition to cost, like the weight and ergonomics has been one of the troubling factors, right?
Yeah.
Well, things that
It's a lot of stuff out there.
for people to get over, right? For long-term use, and we've had trouble, like trying to accommodate to our face.
We're constantly checking notes and trading notes with each other. You know, I was just telling Norm that like Globular Cluster came with heavier silicone versions of the pads and lighter versions, and I ended up trying all of them and really liking these lighter versions.
Yeah. They need to figure out, I think, the weight distribution. Like at this point, a year later, I don't really need that extra screen on the outside for the eyesight.
It's true.
Yeah. I feel like that could go away. I like this Belkin third-party strap.
That's working for you?
This is exactly kind of how it was in the developer preview.
Yeah.
When they had the knit strap plus.
This is what they photoshopped off people's heads.
Right. In the marketing material. And then there's this one from ResMed, which we haven't used yet, which is a company that makes like CPAP head straps. And I want to try that.
I'm looking forward to trying that.
Yeah, but interesting. I am okay with the face interface, and you prefer it without. You like the peripheral.
I really like the peripheral, especially in a hotel room. I'm definitely going to go to like Mauna Kea and sit there in the virtual environment. But in my house, I'm not going to sit in the environment and watch what I watch with pass-through on. And when this is floating, I'll tell you, the color fidelity between pass-through and reality is shockingly good to me.
Interesting.
Like I think that in the final analysis, in a couple of years, we'll learn how much singing and dancing was going on behind the scenes of this to stitch together its version of how VR works.
Yeah.
And I know economies of scale will make these things lighter. It will make them easier to use. But I definitely really feel much more much less isolated by letting it float.
And then at the beginning, you talked about how when Apple enters a new product category, they elevate it, or they bring their level of polish, or they take a medium and a format and they raise the table stakes.
Yeah.
And I think they've done that with the pass-through quality and the high resolution panels that they've put in here. That feels like a bare minimum for me to enjoy computing with it, to enjoy
totally
watching
agree.
a movie with it. It's not like I don't like watching YouTube videos in the Quest 3. Like,
Yeah.
I'm
No, it's also one of the killer apps for the Quest 3.
Yep.
Really, really pleasurable watching movies in the Quest 3.
But I think the extra high, near 4K by 4K panels they have in here are kind of like the bare minimum I want going forward if I'm going to consider using this as a virtual monitor.
I
for
totally
example.
agree. Oh, also, that's my question. Have you been using the
Yes.
monitor? Have you been using this for editing?
Yes, yeah. So
Okay, tell me how that is.
this is the case, right? This is their Apple Vision case. And I have in here the Mac Mini.
Oh, so this is an entire computer platform right here.
And this is, I think of this kind of having like infinite iPads, right?
Right.
Like it's iPad Windows, but I'm not doing real computing. I'm not doing real photo editing. I'm consuming media mostly as I would do. I don't have an iPad Pro anymore. Like I use this.
Okay.
But for video editing, for real computing, it's gonna be a laptop or something like a Mac Mini. This is the M4 Mac Mini.
Yep.
It's came out, you can get it for like really $500 and plug SSDs into here.
It'll work with a wireless keyboard.
Yeah, absolutely, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you do need a plug-in power.
Sure.
So it's for hotel rooms. It's not for the airplane.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not convinced this replaces your laptop.
Right.
But it's kind of like the ultimate accessory for the Vision Pro. And I know it's an absurd thing to say. A computer is the accessory for a $3,500 mixed reality headset, but I can do so much more with this when I pair it to a small form factor computer that I can also travel with.
So we didn't cover this, but early on with the Vision, about 2 months in, I took it on one of our London trips.
Yeah.
And I did not bring my laptop.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm only going to do my networking and my communications through this thing. And I found that a little bit difficult.
Yeah.
Specifically because so much of my day-to-day business with my computer is photo editing and sorting and categorization and taxonomy. Yeah. And when I don't have access to my main hard drive of, 100 gigabytes of stuff I've got on there, and with the fact, and I haven't checked in the last couple of months, but the fact that this doesn't play well with Dropbox is a real hindrance for my work process, because Dropbox is how I make sure my files don't ever disappear, but it's where I'm working on.
Yeah, getting files onto here and out of here outside the Apple iCloud ecosystem is a pain. I completely agree.
It's the one place where Apple's always really pissed me off. Like iPads, like, are you gonna use it as a computer? Yeah, but I still can't get images on or off of it in an easy fashion.
And then you asked, as a computer platform, like, so completely unrelated.
Yep.
We did a series where we went on set. One of our London trips was going to the set of Silo, which completely coincidental is an Apple TV Plus show.
Yes.
Right. But I did some of the editing on that series, video series,
Inception.
in this headset, because we had to do editing on some drives that were Mac formatted for me.
Right.
So that was on a MacBook and on the Mac Mini, where the MacBook screen is too small, and where I was editing, I didn't have screens to plug into here. When they updated the software to allow for the ultra-wide mirroring, I found there's 3 settings. There's a standard widescreen, like 16:9. There's a wide, and then like a super ultra wide. Just the middle setting was perfect for me, and it was really interesting how I didn't treat it like a iMac screen.
Right.
Like, it wasn't like I was playing a video game on a giant screen. I treated it like a computer monitor that weighed 0 grams. I could move anywhere in the world, because I was still pushing my eyes up close to this facsimile of a screen that's a mirroring from the Mac. And my brain just stopped thinking that it wasn't a real screen.
Yeah.
It does some like local foveated rendering both on the headset and on the Mac side. And that 5K display looks really good. It's like every bit as good as having 27-inch monitor, and I'm stretching it up to like 48 inches.
That's amazing. I will say it's funny to watch media on this, because the first time I had it, I'm just blowing every screen up as big as it can get.
Right.
And then I'm making them small again, because I can't see. It feels like I'm sitting in the first row of the movie theater.
And maybe it's like, I know there's like a lock focal distance to where these optics are perfectly sharp,
Yeah.
but I'm bringing things up close.
Yeah.
Like I'm bringing a lot of these things up close to me and treating them as if they're real physical objects.
It brings one aspect that I have difficulty with this, which is one of the issues I have with the floating headset is it makes bringing my eyes back to the precise same location as last time a little bit more difficult. And I have to be very conscious to, when you have these straps set up in the right way, you put it on and it's the same every time.
Yeah.
It's really good. It's gotten better and better. When it's floating, it's still a little bit of a dance. And it's also getting better. Actually, I want to go back to something we were talking about earlier. We're talking about Oculus 3, which is a great machine. And we're talking about Apple and their sophistication at knowing what people really want out of a product. I thought what was really fascinating when the Vision first came out is that my Quest 3's pass-through became twice as good in the first 3 weeks.
They updated it to fix the misalignment.
The misalignment.
Yeah.
And here's, look,
The
there's some
warping.
internet commentary that was like, the Oculus people are idiots, they didn't know. And it's, no, they were just working with a different priority set. And Apple shows up and says, actually, those things aren't important, this is the most important. And Oculus goes, okay, let's try that, and instantly yields a better product. It's not dumbness, it's just philosophical different approach.
Absolutely. Ghost and controls too. One of the fundamental philosophical differences between the Quest and the Vision Pro's input, right?
Input is, and it's my biggest issue with
is.
this thing.
You know,
look, I would take a ring. Was it the Uma, whatever that thing is called? I would, just so that I could point and get to something.
We'll give them full credit for, the eye tracking plus tap gesture works, right?
And the additions they've been making about doing that to see the
Yeah.
time, and
Yeah.
have been spectacular.
You know what? I find myself using a mouse with this most of the time.
I have a Magic trackpad that I travel with, because
Yeah.
so if I'm specifically looking at YouTube stuff,
Yeah.
YouTube is way too hard to work with in the Vision without a
scrub
pointer.
bar, exactly.
It's because the scrub bar is so hard to hit that scrub bar.
Yeah, yeah. It
And
turns
I
out,
look at these as growing pains. These are,
and I think it's again philosophical differences, because we saw when VR headsets first came out, there was such a big push for embodiment, right? And you want these one-to-one interactions. People love room scale, right? And it turns out people are lazy. I mean, the
We're all
reason
lazy.
the mouse works and reason game pads and thumbsticks work is because they're abstractions, right? A button works because you can press a button and it does a thing, and you don't have to contort your hand or lift your hand even. As magical and as seamless as pointing or grabbing a thing might be, sometimes I just want the micro gesture.
Yeah.
Like our wrists and our finger control is so precise as biological creatures. Like, let's take advantage of that.
I totally agree. And whenever I break out the trackpad, I'm always so delighted, because I've had 40 years of getting really good at that thing.
Yeah. It still feels pretty early, right? A year
In
into
terms
it.
of the technology and its sophistication in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. And we see a lot of reports of maybe this is going to be less interesting to Apple going forward, right? Maybe they'll want more of the optical pass through, glasses, putting displays in glasses like these going forward. It would be sad for me if that was the case, because I genuinely still love using this device.
Hard same.
And every time I put it on, it kind of reminds me of the iPhone 4. Do you remember when the iPhone 4 came out and it was the first time they had the Retina screen, right? The pixel density was sharp enough
that
on
you
a
couldn't really
smartphone
see it.
that you couldn't see the pixels.
Yeah.
And the level of polish, that was the first time I had that aluminum frame around the iPhone, the glass front and the glass back. Every time I picked up an iPhone 4 that year, I was like, this feels nice.
It feels like the future.
Yeah, and it felt like it's a nice object.
Yeah.
Like they probably spent hundreds of millions, if not billions, in the R&D process to make this thing. And every time I put it on, it still feels like, wow, they made this really nice thing for me.
I gotta say, every single day I marvel at how magnificently beautiful this object is. Just this, with the foam sides and the stretchy way and the fast way it goes on, that is a masterpiece of industrial design.
And it might not be for everyone. I mean, obviously, clearly not for everyone, with the price and the hurdles and the hoops that you might have to jump through to make it work. But I'm so glad that this thing exists. And I'm still enjoying it like you do for movies. I'm enjoying it for computing. I'm finding more utility out of it. And I really hope they continue with this product line.
Now I haven't been, I didn't do my homework for this video. You've been telling me that the immersive stuff, the underwater stuff.
Yes.
So I've only ever seen the slackline video, and I haven't
yeah.
gone to watch the other ones. But you say they're really spectacular.
Yeah, yeah. So Apple has a whole series of videos they call immersive media, right? And if in
they're shooting this with
parlance,
custom equipment they've built and designed.
Yeah, it's VR 180, right? They're shooting stereoscopic, up to 180-degree field of view content, and they've worked with Blackmagic to create a new camera system, which now you can lease or buy for like $50,000. But they've been working with filmmakers, and really they spend a lot of money with these production companies to make these short-form documentaries and music videos in this immersive media format with a potential user base of what, a couple 100,000, right? That again feels like, wow, they made this content for me, and it really is like. When we say it's transporting, this is the first time I felt with the quality of the video, with the cinematography, with the direction. You alluded to the fact we did some VR 180 series with Oculus for Meta, right?
We're very familiar with how difficult that pipeline is and the pitfalls,
And the cameras were hard to use. We're buying these beta cameras essentially. And we had some ideas of how intimate a conversation could be to show something like a makerspace, but the filmmakers have been so impressed with the amount of the placement of the cameras.
Dude, there's some stuff in the slackline video that just consistently took my breath away. And hilariously, the whole time I'm watching that slackline video, I'm thinking, how many times did she have to do this walk? And I'm counting in my head, well, the camera was here and now it's not there, so there's at least 2. Yeah. Well, here's a third angle, okay, that's at least 3. Oh, there's another angle, there's at least, right? Like how much effort they put into giving you that seamless experience.
Yeah. It's not gonna be live streaming anytime soon. Like the pipeline for that, I don't think is anywhere near that. But to have once every month, a new little mini documentary, a new compilation of sports highlights. They're trying these different things. The music video they did with The Weeknd called Open Hearts, it might not be music for you, but the integration of CG that they've been putting in, perfectly registered computer graphics for labels, for enhancement of effects with video, really jaw-dropping stuff. I was my mouth was open, wow, how did they do this? And it's just so compelling.
I've got one thing I'd love Apple to take on, which is, can you hand me the battery?
Yeah.
So this battery for the Apple Vision does not tell you if it's green, it means it has more than 50%, and if it's not green, it means it has less. That's a very low resolution monitor. And I'm looking at it and I think, well, that's an LED. You could flicker that LED at any hertz you wanted. And if you flickered it at the battery level it was, then when I saw it through my Apple Vision, I would be able to see just a little floating percentage. Just put it attached to that. Let me hold this up, and when the light goes on, it tells me what percentage I have in this. I know that they're doing a lot of work building the world for me. I really want that one addition.
And that's one of those sci-fi visual effects enhancement things that we expect these devices to have.
Totally.
I think in the year since this came out, we've learned that to train this to recognize objects, which you can train the system to recognize a keyboard, a guitar, so that it can overlay. The tracking latency isn't there yet. There's about a 1 second delay. And it does eat a lot of that compute in the back end to try to keep on looking out for these things.
That's what I mean about that singing and dancing. They're doing so much work to give you this picture of a VR headset that the extensions and the improvements will happen in later editions.
We're happy to answer questions.
Yeah, and I know the comments are going to be full of people accusing us of being Apple fanboys, and we've tried to give a really balanced assessment of why we like this hardware, not why we think professionally you should get this, because this isn't a recommendation. It's just a look back.
And I agree with however they're spinning it now, that it's a little glimpse into the future. It really, I might not be using it every day. I'm certainly using it at least once a week. But every time I put it on, it's wow, I forget how nice it is in here. At the same time, every time I take it off, I'm like, oh, the real world's pretty nice too.
Totally true. And again, it remains one of my favorite additions to my traveling set. Absolutely.
All right, thank you, Adam, for chatting with me. I've been waiting to have this conversation for a long time. I thought the 1 year anniversary of its launch might be a good one.
If you have experience with the Apple Vision, love to hear your experience with it in the comments, things you think we should be checking out, and I'd love to know specifically about surprisingly immersive experiences you didn't expect with the Vision. Because that's been some of the places I found the most sort of novelty.
And now let's retreat back to the subreddit.
Exactly.
Our safe space.
Exactly. Thank you guys so much for watching that video. I would be remiss if I didn't tell you we have some excellent merch. We have a 5-pack of demerit badges for sale right now at tested/store.com. We've got the I hung it off of level demerit badge, the I built the chair backwards demerit badge, the I hit my thumb with a hammer demerit badge. We've got the stapler in my finger demerit badge, and my favorite, I stuck the duct tape to itself demerit badge. Get yours now, tested/store.store. Tested-store. Tested. It's right here. There. Just click there.